You ever notice the harder you try to create something good, the worse it comes out? How many times have you sat down to write and after a few minutes, the pressure that this has to be really good starts to get to you and you just end up caving. You just can't. Nothing flows. And how many times have you started up a session and then just, threw it away and it just ends up on your hard drive, never to see it again? This is what happens when you want to create something meaningful, but that collides with the pressure of needing to get it right. If you don't know me, my name is Dave. I'm a songwriter and music producer. This channel really is about exploring the creative process and how we might access more freedom and meaning in our art. So what's going on here? Why is it when we put so much pressure on ourselves to create something good, we just end up shooting ourselves in the foot and can never actually get anything out the door or create something that we're proud of or something that feels real and natural? One of the first pitfalls that I think we fall into is something I call the expectation gap. And that's where we start comparing ourselves to our favorite artists or a future version of ourselves that we would aspire to be. Or maybe we start thinking we don't sound enough like the current trend. Or we imagine this perfect version of the song and we're still at square one. And so there's this huge gap between where we are and where we want to be. And that gap is filled with anxiety and stress and pressure. What happens when we start to introduce all of this pressure on ourselves is it starts to shut down that natural, creative, playful, intuitive side of ourselves that is so good at creating. And this can quickly lead to another factor that comes into play. Something else that can trip us up pretty fast is when we start to worry about what other people might say or think. We start wondering, well, how will they respond to this? Will other people like this? Will my art be seen as good enough? And from this place, we're actually just anticipating reception. How are people going to receive this rather than not worrying about that and just creating from a place of freedom and intuition. Creativity needs safety to be fully expressed. And when we are preoccupied with how people will receive us, we shut down that sense of safety and we kind of mute or stifle our creative energy. So once we've allowed the external world to kind of come in and cloud our creative space, it becomes that much easier to start self-editing. And when I say self-editing, as songwriters in particular, we have to wear two different hats. The first is the creative side, the natural intuition side, the side of us that generates ideas. And then on the other end of that, there's the editor, and the editor is making the decisions that are a little more objective for the song. And I'm sure this applies to a bunch of different art forms as well. The problem is when we start to edit ourselves too early, we end up cutting off these creative ideas before they have a chance to fully form. The more we're able to leave the editor out of the room in the initial phases of the creative process, the more access we will have to that creative, intuitive side of us that comes up with ideas naturally, and they tend to be a lot better. There is one more obstacle, probably the most powerful one, that we have to contend with as artists, and that is our identity as artists. Our identity is how we see ourselves, what we give ourselves permission to do and not do. It's kind of like saying, I am this type of artist and I only do this. And I don't allow myself to do that other thing because I don't see myself as that type of artist. It's kind of like a rule book that you follow. When it comes to creating a piece of art, our identity can sometimes get in the way because finishing something, whether that's a song or a piece of art or whatever, it creates evidence. It creates something that might reflect back to us something that we don't want to acknowledge or notice. For example, we might create something that we don't think is that good. And once we acknowledge that, once we see that evidence, it reflects back to us a fear that maybe we're not as good as we think we are. This evidence, this finished piece, can either threaten or support our identity as artists and who we think we are. It's not a lack of discipline or creativity that's the issue. It's really our deep-seated fear of threatening how we see ourselves, our perception of ourselves. And this is kind of our ego at work here. Our ego's job is not to help us grow, it is to keep us safe. The problem is we conflate, we draw a connection between our creative output and who we are as people. We think we are our art. And when we conflate the two, the stakes become enormous because if we create something that's not very good, subjectively speaking, we think that we're not very good. So we obviously try to avoid that conclusion by avoiding finishing something. But the art is not you. The art is just a snapshot in time. It doesn't explain your past and it doesn't dictate your future either. Art is always moving. Creativity is always moving. It's dynamic. And so are we as artists. If we can recognize that our art is not who we are, we can begin to give more space between who we think we are, our identities, and the art that we create. So these are some of the biggest traps and pitfalls that we contend with as artists. So let's see if we can find a way to shift our perspective a little bit and maybe introduce a little more play and freedom into our creative processes. So once you start to identify and recognize these traps or pitfalls, it starts to become clear that your best work does not come from trying harder. It actually comes when you learn to relax. When you drop the comparisons, stop worrying about how it will be perceived, leave the self-editor at the door in the initial stages, and stop attaching your identity to your output, you can start to allow more play to come back into the creative process. Think about the times that you created your best work. It was probably when you were relaxed, you had no outcome, you had no goal in mind, you just wanted to create something. And what came out of it was probably some of the stuff you love the most. I think the artists who are able to sustain a long creative career are the ones that are able to honor and protect this state of play. They aren't free of comparison or external validation or self-editing or any of that stuff. It's still there, but I think they create in spite of it. Not trying so hard isn't a weakness, it's a strategy. It frees up the creative side of you that explores, that takes risks, that plays. This isn't just theoretical, it's practice. So here's an exercise you can try that will help to train you to reconnect to that playful, creative side of you that is free of all of these expectations and the pressure. So a few times a week, set aside 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it may be, set a timer, and for that time, your only job is to generate ideas, create something. No outcome, no deadline, no pressure. You're not going to be releasing this to the world. This is just a container, a safe space where you can create without expectations. Once the timer goes off, you're done. And like if it's going really well, like keep going. But this is all you have to do. This is just an exercise in allowing your playful, exploratory, creative self to just play in the sandbox. You're not writing your next masterpiece here. You're simply training your body, training your mind to get into the state of allowing exploration, allowing creative play without any of the stuff we talked about before, the comparing, the judgment, the editing, the attaching ourselves to the output. There is no goal here except to play. And if you want to deepen this practice, try adding limitations to your sessions. So for example, if you always write on guitar, try writing on piano or a different instrument. If you're a music first kind of guy or girl, try writing the lyrics first. Try creating art in a different space than you typically would. Or think about one tiny moment from your day that was significant to you and let that be your inspiration for the session. Just have fun with it. Don't think of these as restrictions. Think of them as invitations to play. And if you're making music, you might consider recording yourself just for fun, just to see what comes out. The goal here is not productivity, it's reconnection. Try this for a week or two and see how you feel. See how it feels to sit down and create without the pressure. Every artist, when they sit down to write, experiences some form of resistance, whether it's comparison, judgment, self-editing, or wondering if they are good enough or their art is good enough. This isn't failure. This is part of the creative process. The real problem is that all of these things pull us out of our core creative centers, that place where true creativity can emerge. Moving beyond these things isn't about trying harder. It's about loosening your grip on these things and learning to trust yourself more and leaning into that free, creative, expressive side of ourselves even more. And when we do this, when we create from a place of ease and safety and curiosity, ideas flow so much easier. This is a process like anything, and I think it's unique to every artist. Don't beat yourself up if you find yourself falling into any of these traps. Noticing it when it happens is progress in itself, and oftentimes can be enough to right the ship. If you'd like support with this, alongside other artists who are also navigating these challenges, I welcome you to join the Songfarm waitlist. Songfarm is a private group for songwriters, singer-songwriters, music producers, and artists who want to create more freely, consistently, and honestly. You can find the link in the description. I'm curious, where do you get stuck in the process? What comes up for you? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.